Hey, what's up guys, Shadow Steel here. Welcome back to the latest devlog for the Blackwater brand. This is for the season of fall, and I decided to do a little something different with how I'm talking about this route a little bit, because we're going to be talking about it while footage of the route, while me running on the route is going to be playing. So bear that in mind. It's not construction footage or development footage right now. It's just me running the route and some shots here and there of the route. Anyway, so I want to thank you guys so much for clicking on the video and actually going through and, taking the time to look into this route. This route has been a project for about 5 years, and we're getting close to the 5th year. I took on the route project in February 2020, and as of right now, it's pretty complete, and I actually have been really excited to show off a lot of the things that have since changed. The route itself is mostly complete. I would say about the main run end to end, there's only like a handful of spots that still need scenery work, but I would say probably about 70% of the route is done in terms of scenery work. So you got that going for you. And there's a few gaps here and there, so 70 is probably a good round number there. But in terms of the route itself, it's always been a roughly 30-mile route. And originally, when it got started, it was actually 15 miles. It's actually been doubled since I started constructing the route, or well, adding to it. Because the original route, I never actually owned the original route. It actually was a different route altogether that somebody else, a good friend of mine, who shall remain nameless for now, was actually working on. And when he dropped out of the community, for reasons, again, I do not want to speak for him, but I will talk, if he wants to talk about it, I will gladly do a video with him to kind of discuss kind of the back and forth about this route. Because this was his route originally, and it was never really published to the public. It was always like something that was being developed in the background, but his legacy has kind of continued in a way with the train sim community, in more ways than one, but that's not really meant to be discussed here nor there. So what's been going on with the route itself? Well, there's been some attempts at building a swing bridge at the eastern end of the route, at the far eastern end of the route. So the route officially ends in the town of Blackwater, but at a little bit farther west of the route, I should have said west in the first place. At the western end of the route, there's a sort of like siding called Castletown Siding, and there's a swing. And I wanted to build a swing bridge, an animated swing bridge that showed off that this area it tends to be home to river traffic as well. Well, the two swing bridges I was able to find in the game are not really all that great to use. They're one's from the Montana Highline, or was it? I think it's either Stevens Pass or Montana Highline. Well, no, it's Stevens Pass. That's the one. And the other one's from the Maritime Mainline route, which is what used to be Portland Terminal. Portland Terminal's version does work a little better than the one from Stevens Pass, but the one from Stevens Pass, they both look relatively the same, and mainly because both routes were developed by the same developer. The issue has become on trying to get the timing for the bridge to swing out before the train gets to it, and then swing back out once the train leaves. And it's very difficult to do that. For some reason, the way it's set up, it's sort of like, it was basically a headache, so I basically scrapped the idea in terms of the animated stuff, and then decided, well, I'm going to go ahead and make a static, basically a part of the route that looks like it would be a swing bridge, but just a static position. The next thing that I've been working on that's actually been very exciting is, at least to me, was actually finishing up the city of Blackwater, and hopefully moving on to the future where we have areas that Eureka also needs to be finished up, which is one end of the route. And then finally Stovall. The three major cities in the route so far that I've been working on, they're getting closer and closer to being complete. with Soval being the smallest, like the least complete, but the most complete is Blackwater, and that cycle is getting better and better. And the Railroad Museum, which I've mentioned a few times before, is finally taking shape. It's finally getting to the point where it's it's starting to feel like a railroad museum. It's a small station platform that you can add, like have a 2-car passenger train with a RS3 at the front end, and it's designed to handle like small excursions in and out of the station. Basically, something that allows for people to run like a small excursion train in and out of the Blackwater Railroad Museum. So that's actually going to be fun. And the other thing that has actually been really been sort of a what's the word? It's one of these routes tend to be very complex in my head, but over time just become over the top, and like they realize, oh, you probably didn't even need to do that in the first fucking place. Honestly, it was just that. So when Blackwater is being developed pretty largely, and I realized that there's a section of the city that's going to have to be very carefully modeled for winter. There's a retaining wall along the entirety of the river that is on the side of, like, on Blackwater's side, and it's from the mountain subdivision. Well, I remember, like, this wall will actually have this different texture for the winter textures, obviously, like most other assets from most routes. But this one ends up changing it where the ground textures on the top part actually disappear. So I need to go through and actually make sure that each of the textures there are actually decent and whatnot. So you got that going for us there too. And next up is the fact that lately I've been doing comparisons, before and after type stuff with the original Century. I almost said, well, there you go. The original route's name was Century County. That was the original name of the route back in 2020. I changed it to Blackwater in turn to basically differentiate, like basically make it separate from the existing route. So it's no longer Century County, but instead Blackwater. And it just, you got like this whole thing where it's a literal, like, there's a lot going there. There's a lot, like a lot of details and stuff that I've been slowly modeling and slowly piecing together, and it's really exciting. But that led into this whole conversation with a few users that I'm like on several discords that I'm on, where every time I mention the route's name, the Blackwater branch, they associate it immediately with the Red Dead Redemption franchise, which there is a town in that series called Blackwater. It's one of the main cities in the game. It's actually the most modern city in the first game, and then the second game, I think it's like one of these smaller cities you can go to. Or kind of the mid-tier cities. I don't know which one it would be, but in the second game, it's kind of one of the few cities you can actually go to and get a feel for how, like, the city would have been in the first game. Interestingly enough, the route that I've been building is not ever, like, I never really associated the Blackwater branch with Red Dead Redemption. Instead, was associated with an anime series called Familiar of Zero, or, well, the Japanese name is up on screen right now, so go ahead and just take a look at it right there. So, but it was a Japanese anime where it was basically, the story is this kid from Japan gets thrust into this parallel world, and he becomes like the hero. Like, it's kind of that whole isekai thing where the main character is thrust into a whole another parallel world. Well, my whole thought process behind this route was basically, after the events of the anime, this world gets kind of influenced by Earth, which is the parallel world to it, and then so on. It just grows from there. It just expands and becomes a massive modern country and city and world and whatnot, kind of like overnight, essentially. So it goes from medieval type dragons and mages and all this kind of stuff to a massive modern city, and the route takes place about, I would say about 20, maybe 30 years after the events of the anime. So a decent amount of time has passed to kind of signify that this route, like this has been the significant change, like in my head. But there's never been anything documenting how that all occurred. Like there's no like backstory that I've made on my channels, and no like animations or anything like that. Well, I shouldn't say that. Not entirely. There was a video long ago called the Mogar Range. Or the Copper Road. It's one of the two. I think it was like either that or like it was named something like the Mogar Range, Copper Road, or Market Branch. It was basically detailing the history of a section of the railroad from that same world. But it was called, like, it was part of a route that I was building called the Academy Corridor. And it came up with this giant story, like this sort of small but interesting story about like how this line was developed to go straight to the market city center of the capital city and to bring food and stuff to the people. And it goes straight through the heart of the mountain range, which originally it was a joke to call it the Mogar Mountain Range. I don't know where that name originally came from in my head. I know it was meant to be a reference to the Achievement Hunters and their Minecraft Let's Play, because one of the guys in the Minecraft video, he says, one guy asked, like, what's your warrior name? And then one of the guys, Michael Jones, that's his name, said Mogar. Like, he goes like, Mogar. I could probably put the clip here in the video, but knowing full well about like how that went down and who's in that video might not be best to do it, because there's there was a lot of drama between some of the members of that YouTube channel. That the Rooster Teeth had a lot of problems with Milky, but that's a story for another time. But the Mogar Mountain Range, I would need to look this up. The Mogar obviously is a reference to something, but I don't remember what it was back then. So it might have been the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. Honestly, I think so actually. But yeah, it's another thing that was just like this meant to be sounding imposing and sort of like drastic, and that never, like, it's still there to some extent, but it's not given the proper. I don't think I've ever made the proper naming to say that this is that mountain range. And there's actually going to have to be a few changes with how naming and the history and all this kind of stuff in my head is going to work for this route. So you got that going for you. Now, I will say that the Blackwater branch is, like, this leads me into my next point, that the Blackwater branch, we're going to have some, hopefully I'm going to have some very interesting little videos that detail kind of the history, kind of show off the in-universe history of the Blackwater branch and the railroad that is associated with it, the railroads that are associated with it, and hopefully kind of go back to that little storytelling side of myself that I used to have back in the early 2010s. It's hard to believe it's been a decade since I've actually made stuff like that. I used to be used to do a lot of fan fiction writing back when I was in high school, which I graduated in 2013, so that puts the perspective there. Yes, I am an adult. I've been doing this for the better part of almost 10 years now, actually, in terms of YouTube, but I've never considered it a hobby. Or never considered it a job. I've considered it a hobby, and that's about it. Anyway, point is that I used to be a lot more creative with storytelling with this kind of stuff, and then when I started doing like Let's Plays and stuff, that's kind of where it ended up. So hopefully in the next couple of months we will have dedicated videos kind of telling the story of the Blackwater branch and kind of showing off like how the route has kind of grown and developed and kind of like shown off details of it. So you're gonna have that going for you as well. So the Blackwater branch will probably be the first route to be featured as a storytelling type situation, like where it has a full history style documentary type thing to show off the history of the Blackwater branch. And that should help clear out some confusion about what the route is like and stuff like that. Because that's been something that's always not gotten under my skin, but it's one of those things where it's like, okay, yeah, that needs to be cleared up. Repeatedly I've had to clear this up on Discord, and it just seems like best to actually just share a video that just links up to the route's history and whatnot. As for the route's full development, there has been at least one hiccup recently, and that was actually trying to get the original Old Century County back on my computer so I could actually do side-by-side comparison shots, which I will save for another time. But it's one of these things where I kind of screwed up my original route file when doing that. Thankfully, I did have a backup, like an older backup. It was from, I think, it was actually before my computer died in May, my old computer, because that's another thing that happened, was that my computer died in May. So my old computer died, and thankfully I had everything backed up for the most part. But that was the last backup I had made. It was from May 26, 2024. So I had to go in and just drag that into the old folder and then get that backed up. And thankfully nothing significant was lost. Probably a few scenery assets and whatnot here and there, but aside from that, there was nothing significant that was lost in terms of that hiccup. So it's a small issue, minor problem, but it's better. It gives me a chance to redo some things that I really want to do. So there's that. Aside from that, there will be the first thing I plan to release is later this month. Maybe later, probably in November, is the first locomotive of the Blackwater branch collection to be released, and that is the Titan, the small SW1200 with a custom asset nameplate on it, and that's going to be featured in the Blackwater, the part of a collection called the Blackwater Collection. That's going to be kind of a significant deal because that will give people kind of a taste of just kind of the level of detail we'll see with this locomotive, these routes and stuff. So we're getting there, and I hope for the most part that this route gets to a point where I'm very comfortable with releasing it. And with a couple of routes recently that have popped up on Train Sim community websites and stuff like that, it's getting to the point now where I feel like it's very possible for me to release the route in a slightly unfinished state, but finished enough where you can run it end to end and not worry about there's a huge chunk of land right there that's missing assets and doesn't look good for screenshots and so on and so forth. So that's going to be changed. I think I have a plan to release this route very shortly. There's not been a concrete date set for the route's release, but I do plan to release the route sometime in 2025, which would be the 5th year of development for the Blackwater branch. I want to say February of 2025, but I don't want to pinpoint it just yet, because as it stands right now, there's still a lot of work to be done. And that's a really, really big and really important thing for me in the long run, is actually getting things to a much more clean and sort of stable and basically something that looks nice and not look half-assed. And at the end of the day, the big areas like the cities are going to be the big headache for me in the long run. Doing trees and grass and all that stuff, not a big problem for me. I can do that. That's not hard to do. But doing things like the cities and the towns and basically even yard complexes. Yard complexes have been kind of a headache for me lately too, to kind of figure out where to put everything. Thankfully, there's not much in the way of yard complexes left to do. There is one area in particular that I do want to redo a little bit, but aside from that, there's not much left in terms of track work and stuff like that. It's just mainly city building, and that's always been a headache of mine over the years. And I just really am happy with how things have been turning out so far. I've been very happy with running on the route nowadays. I literally have spent more time running on the route and taking screenshots of it than I have been building lately. and that's kind of funny to me. But with that said, guys, thank you guys so much for clicking on the video and getting this far. And with that said, like and comment down below, subscribe if you guys want more, join the Dieselworks Discord, which is linked down below as well, and subscribe to the Dieselworks YouTube channel, which is also, if you're watching it there, here, if you're watching this on the Dieselworks YouTube channel, thank you. You're kind of one of the first couple of viewers, but if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. I'm going to be posting updates here more regularly on the Dieselworks YouTube channel, so thank you guys so much for watching the video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.